In 1981, Styx embark upon this dystopian, high-camp theatrical musing on freedom of expression, freedom of music, fascism on Broadway. The presentations of these dark regimes serve a purpose of shining a light on the freedoms we enjoy, and then asks us how we would feel if those freedoms were stripped away. Add mullets to the mix and hey presto, you have Styx, Kilroy was here. Abby Hoffman said freedom of speech is the right to shout theatre in a crowded fire. And my word, Dennis DeYoung certainly lights the fuse of this band's discontent with this most theatrical of productions. The concern or rallying cry was the rise of these religious groups in the USA that would raise the fear of the corrupting influence of rock music, with its loose morals, Miami Vice chinos, and satanic overtones. Ozzy, the Bat Muncher, of course, was one of the prime targets, as was Kiss those nights in Satan's service, not to mention Styx, of course, who take their name from a river in the underworld. All these bands were seen as emblematic of some sort of moral decay, and signs for this depravity were looked for in backward messaging and symbols and signs, nefarious figures lurking on album sleeves. It all pointed to something very dark going on beneath the surface. The concept I rather like, but it's the acted out scenes and the duff dialogue which spreads the cheese a little bit too thick on this one, with Dr. Righteous as the villain of our story with his robot minions. So we have this fascist regime with this firm grip on power, outlawing rock music. Lots of uniformed personnel mirroring the kind of Eastern Bloc and arresting anyone that was deemed to be a threat to the peace. And the media churns out this propaganda to the masses. My word, it's sounding awfully close to home, isn't it? And above it all, you have this madman, this despot, who monopolises religion to veil his insidious agenda. Cue diabolical laugh. The story's protagonist is Robert Orrin Charles Kilroy, Rock, played by Dennis DeYoung, and the villain of the piece, Dr. Righteous, is portrayed by James Young, whose rich baritone and droopy moustache makes him sufficiently menacing. And Dr. Righteous presides over the MMM, which is the majority for musical morality, which is of course a thinly disguised poke at the religious fundamentalists of the day. But Kilroy escapes from his captivity disguised as one of Dr. Righteous's robot minions and joins forces with Jonathan Chance, JC the Saviour, played by Tommy Shaw. I mean, my word, these names. I mean, I think all we need is an Amelia Shagworthy and Bruno Shaft, and we have an 80s porn movie. Mr. Roboto is the single, of course, and a beautifully shaped, cut-out picture disc. And it marks a point in the story where Kilroy escapes and joins up with Jonathan Chance, Tommy Shaw. He embarks on this mission to bring back rock and roll. As disjointed and as convoluted as the story may well be, and believe me, I think the translation into an actual album is somewhat precarious. Nevertheless, it's still an enjoyable rock opera, and Mr. Roboto still features in the Styx set to this day, as it should, featuring the most infectious stomping beat and engaging synthed-out chorus. Don't Let It End is another great song, a piano-driven ballad, which doesn't quite fit in as far as I'm concerned. It lacks that, it doesn't fit that Kraftwerkian atmosphere that the other songs establish on this album. High Time fits in quite nicely. Of course, you get Dennis DeYoung talking about how Dr. Righteous rules over the nation and uses the media as a propaganda tool. Of course, he sings, I flip the switch on my laser video and there's a man staring back at me. He starts to speak in a voice so righteous about the sins of society, but pins his hope and faith in the younger generation, especially when he sings, I see the kids of a new generation, they won't stand for this mind control. They're going to change the world we live in. They're going to bring back rock and roll. One of the reasons this album is seen very much as a cut below what Styx usually do is they were constantly favouring songs that drove the narrative, that fitted the narrative arc of the story, rather than concentrating on writing the best music they could. But despite this being a rather kitschy album. It does have some enjoyable moments on it. I rather like the boisterous anti-establishment pop rock of Cold War, the booming authoritarianism of Dr. Righteous James Young, especially when he sings of the hypocrisy of these type of leaders in Double Life, and the rather wistful duets on songs like Haven't We Been Here Before. Heavy Metal Poisoning is perhaps Dr. Righteous at his most menacing. It's also a little bit irksome, really. Great guitar riff at the start, though. Lines like, first we'll spank your big behinds and then we'll twist your little minds. Heavy Metal Poisoning. As I said, it does poke fun at these fundamentalists who critiqued or certainly campaigned against what they saw as the corrupting influence of rock and roll or rock music, especially within the metal genre, I think. And even includes a bit of a parody, the backward message at the start of Heavy Metal Poisoning, which in translation reads, God has favoured our undertakings, a new order for the ages. It's the same message, if I'm not mistaken, that appears on the coat of arms of the United States of America, perhaps suggesting that any challenge to any freedom is a challenge to all freedoms. Just Get Through This Night is a Tommy Short sung ballad, which goes down smoother than a pair of silk PJs, and fits nicely in with our narrative as a little bit of an aside, but one that certainly adds to the story. Kilroy Was Here may be a cheesy and bloated album, but a rather enjoyable one if you're willing to buy into the concept. I think its raison d'etre is to entertain rather than to impress. It certainly doesn't sit that comfortably against other cornerstones. Let's see what I did there. Albums like Paradise Theatre, Pieces of Eight, and The Grand Illusion. But nevertheless, it's an intriguing record, and perhaps more so given the world we live in at the moment. It seems to be becoming more and more relevant. And the idea of rising up against an oppressive regime has a timeless quality, I think, and despite its theatrics and, as I said, its rather duff dialogue, it's one that will always be relatable. I rather like this album. This was the album that introduced me to Styx. It came into our house in 81, 82, 83 maybe, and I played it to death, for an impressionable 12-year-old, I think it must have been something like that. That, and of course we had the VHS video of Caught in the Act and the live album. Maybe it seems a bit dated now, but I certainly remember enjoying it considerably, simply due to the nostalgia for me that surrounds this record. It will always be a Styx album that I rather enjoy. Anyway, what do you think of this album? Please leave your comments below, and please be sure to click like, subscribe, and check that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads. And if you have a spare moment, do check some of the links below this video for ways you can support the sterling work. Then a classic album review is always much appreciated. And so there we are. I'll leave you with my closing salvo, which is hope you're well, staying safe, but more importantly that you keep listening.